fun, reaching for a gun and going bang, bang.
Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I'm going to tell you a story of 1999 and two movies that came out in 1999, and one of which is incredibly widely regarded as being great and the other didn't get enough love even though it is great. So we're going to Once Upon a Time, this one. Once upon a time in 1999 there was a thing in Australia called a mystery flight where you call up an airline. You give them your credit card details over the phone, and they would then book you in for a mystery flight, which could go to any capital city in Australia. You only found out on the day where you were going. So I booked one in 1999, and I thought, great, this is going to be fun. I might go to Perth on the other side of the country, in which case I could stay overnight, hang out with friends. I could go to Sydney and visit family. I could go to Brisbane and do whatever people did in 1999 in Brisbane. I could go to Darwin, which I hadn't been to at that stage, or I could go to Tasmania and Hobart and hang around there and freeze my ass off. So there were immense possibilities. So I pay up my money, book the mystery flight, end up in Adelaide, which is the closest capital city to Melbourne. It's 800 kilometres away. And I had like a 4-hour turnaround time, 4 or 5 hour turnaround time for the return flight. Wasn't happy. I didn't want to go to Adelaide, didn't particularly have anything I wanted to do there. So I got off the plane, I took a cab into the city, I took a tram down to Glenelg, one of the seaside suburbs of Adelaide. And by the way, it's the only suburb in Australia whose name is a palindrome. And when I got there, I thought, I'll go see a movie. So went to the local cinema in Glenelg and saw The Matrix. Now, The Matrix had already got a lot of love from a lot of people. It was in fanzines I was reading. It was on websites that were doing movie reviews at the time. It was all over the place and it was getting a lot of love from a lot of people. So I went in there, I watched The Matrix, and I kind of went, meh. Didn't really grab me. I didn't like it that much. Now, I don't think that it's a tale told by an idiot, because the Wachowskis aren't idiots. They're very good filmmakers in their own realm. But I do think that it was full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Of course, The Matrix now has an enormous cultural footprint. It's had 3 sequels, each of diminishing quality, kind of like the 1960s, 1970s Planet of the Apes movies. It has enormous cultural impact because of that red pill, blue pill dichotomy, which right-wing nutjobs have kind of weaponized in a way. And that whole idea of, do you take one pill and remain blissfully ignorant of the true nature of the world? Or do you take the other pill and you find out the truth of the world and you've got to live in it and deal with it? Interesting dichotomy, but it's very inward. It's very kind of all about me, in a sense, when that kind of thing is raised. Then, of course, you've got the other problematic aspects of the movie, the hero's journey stuff, which was the Joseph Campbell thing, which was very popular at the time. Maggie Mae Fish has done a couple of YouTube videos really ripping the shreds out of that monomyth hero's journey rubbish, in which she also mentions that Joseph Campbell, just after Pearl Harbor, was telling Americans not to go to World War II and kind of defending German culture. But leaving that aside, for me, it's not a great movie. It's not great science fiction. That whole idea of the machines taking over and using human beings as batteries is, yeah, metaphorically, I understand the metaphor. But from a science fiction point of view, it's kind of ludicrous. Wind power, solar power, tidal power, geothermal power, hydroelectric power. They're going to get you a lot more juice than hooking up a whole bunch of human beings to weird, gooey machinery. And I don't think the acting was particularly good. You still can't convince me that the rapport between Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss was lightning in a bottle in any way. But there was a movie from 1999 that covers some of the same ground and does it for me in a much more interesting way. It's a movie that has a long precedent. It was based on an intellectual property, a novel from 1964, which had already been made into a 2-part television movie by Rainer Werner Fassbinder in 1973. And it's a little film called The 13th Floor.
On the 13th floor of a corporate tower, a team of scientists have created a portal to a simulated universe. Now, after 6 years of testing, They are about to cross the boundaries of reality.
Now, I like the cast in the 13th Floor for a start. You've got Craig Bierko playing a guy called Douglas Hall, who is the protege of a man who has created a big computer industry and has created a simulation of 1937 Los Angeles in a computer with beings that are sentient. People could jack into the machine, download themselves into their avatars in 1937 and experience life in this simulation of 1937's LA. His boss, the great creator, is a guy called Hannon Fuller, played by Mueller-Stahl, who uses his new invention as he's testing it in a kind of interesting but very predictable way. He downloads himself into his avatar in the simulation, spends a lot of money in nightclubs on showgirls, and then sleeps with the showgirls in his virtual reality.
Her name is Erica. She's from Toledo.
It's a predictable use of the technology, but it does lead to some interesting things. The problem is that Fuller is killed in his 1999 world, and Douglas, as his protege, finds out that he may have left a message for Douglas in the 1937 simulation. Now, Douglas is played by Craig Bierko, and Douglas's assistant, Jerry, is played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who also plays a bartender in the 1937 simulation, a guy called Whitney, who is really a nasty piece of work. Douglas starts investigating and trying to find out the message that his boss, Fuller, has left him. Fuller's daughter, Jane, appears, and she's played by Gretchen Mol, and she finds out that there's been a change in the will and she's been left out of the will, and a policeman called McBain, played by Dennis Haysbert, is investigating the murder of Fuller, and Douglas is brought under suspicion. So Douglas goes down into the 1937 simulation, where his avatar is a very shy bank clerk, and he follows the trail to try to find out the information that Fuller has left him. Meanwhile, Whitney, the Vincent D'Onofrio bartender, has opened the letter that he was given by Fuller and found out that his whole world is a simulation. And Whitney is not happy about this. So it's an interesting layered look at virtual reality, and it raises some interesting questions. It was actually based on a 1964 novel by Daniel F. Galui called Simulacron 3, which was made into a German television movie in 1973 called World on a Wire, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Now, I've got a copy of World on the Wire, but I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to watching it now, having rewatched The 13th Floor. And The 13th Floor raises some interesting questions which are deeper and kind of more meaningful than the philosophical questions raised in The Matrix. First off, if you create intelligent beings in a simulation, what are your obligations to them? They are thinking intelligent beings. You've created them. What rights do you have over them? What rights should you have over them, even though they may be part of an intellectual property or even a patent, and they have as much right to life as you do? So there are philosophical questions that arise in this movie, which aren't easily answered. What happens if you turn off the machine? You're killing an entire group of beings. Do you have the right to do that? And if so, why? Now, this is a deeper philosophical question than, do I want to know what the real world's really about or not? The movie raises them, and it kind of answers the questions in a humane way, even though, of course, any simulation in a computer is a precarious thing at best. So I like what this movie does with things. It was only a $13 million budget. It was produced by Roland Emmerich under his Centropolis production company. And of course, Emmerich being German, he knew of the Rainer Werner Fassbinder version, of course. But there are a whole bunch of different aspects when you compare and contrast these two movies, which make them very different. The Wachowskis are American, and their relationship to guns and violence is different than, say, a German person's relationship to them. In The Matrix, guns are fun. Guns are pew pew, wonderful, bullet time, and not knocking the technological advances that movies like The Matrix have created. The use of computers to do bullet time and things like that. The way you can break reality visually in a really fascinating way. All credit to the Wachowskis for doing that, and to the people who work for them as well. I know a couple of people who worked on The Matrix when it was made in Sydney and in the sequels as well. The work given to the people creating the world of the Matrix here in Australia was invaluable at the time, and the kind of advances that they were trained in have held the Australian film industry in good stead for the last 24 years. So all credit to them for that, but there's not much meat on the bone with the Matrix movies for me. I think that their worldview is simplistic and the science fiction is silly and the world building is kind of odd and not as nuanced as I want from a film like this. And of course the gun violence and the pew-pew and all that kind of stuff is very different from the relationship gun violence has in the 13th Floor. When a gun is drawn and somebody is shot, there are consequences to that. It is a really defining moment in the lives of the characters. It's not just something that's done for the visual spectacle of it. It has weight, it has depth, it has lingering consequences. And I like that. I think that's a more mature attitude to things than just shooting shit up. And the reasons why things exist in the world of the 13th Floor is much more interesting than in the Matrix. That human battery thing is just sloppy thinking from my point of view. And also I like the actors. The actors each get to play multiple roles in the 13th Floor. Bierko and Gretchen Mol and D'Onofrio, who is fantastic. His Jerry is totally different than Whitney. When Douglas comes out of the virtual reality, it's in a moment of violence in the virtual reality and he accidentally punches Jerry. And Jerry is shocked and horrified and scared. And we get to see D'Onofrio playing a character who's a friend with the guy who's just punched him, but is flinching as well. There's obviously stuff in Jerry's background, which we never need to know about in the movie. But the performance gives us a lot for that character in that moment. And the third act changes. A change in the third act. I'm not going to do any spoilers on that part because I think it's something you should watch if you haven't. And if you have, you already know what I'm talking about. But I like that third act, and I like the way the third act plays out and the crises that it generates for a number of characters. It's got a lot more to it than The Matrix, and it's a shame it's not better known. Yeah, I mean, $13 million budget compared to a $67 million budget is a lot of difference. And there's only so much that you can show on a screen using that sort of budget. But the recreation of the world of 1937 is really well done and interesting. For me, it's a better film. Now, people can disagree with me. I'm fine with you disagreeing and telling me all the wonderful philosophical underpinnings you've seen in The Matrix and the Matrix movies and how much you like them and how much you saw them at a formative age and all that kind of stuff. I respect all of that. I'm just giving my particular viewpoint on this. And my particular viewpoint is there's a better film out there that uses the same idea, basically, and takes it in a totally different and, for me, deeper direction. Leave a comment or two in there. Let me know what you think, because I think that comparing and contrasting movies that approach the same material from a different direction is never less than instructive. It hones your skills as a movie viewer and not just a passive receiver of information from a screen. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell. You can also support this channel for a couple of bucks a month by going to patreon.com/paleocinema and donating there. Next video, I've got a couple of 1980s horror movies that I haven't seen before and that I kind of enjoyed and that are wildly weird and wonderful. So I'm looking forward to talking about those. So in the meantime, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some lesser films from the past that really are hidden gems. And you're going to have a bit of fun with them. And I'll catch you next time.